It's a joy to be with you. My daughter and her 6 children live just 20 minutes away, so as soon as I get an invitation from this area, I zoom. I have been blessed with 15 grandchildren now, but they're kind of spread out between Texas and Tennessee and Alabama. But just so happens I was in Hoover just the last Wednesday night, and I didn't know you existed until the invitation, and I'm so glad to be with you and share some lessons. It's a true blessing. I don't know about your conversion. I'm the son of missionaries, so there's a sense in which, I didn't have any excuses. I grew up on the mission field of Italy. My father and mother took me when I was 4. They didn't ask my permission, but they took me to the island of Sicily, and then later on to the northern part of Italy, to the capital of the Renaissance, of the rebirth of Western civilization in the city of Florence. So I experienced as a child Sicilian landscape, and then Tuscany, maybe you've heard of it. It's kind of famous for people like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci and many others like that. That's the environment in which I grew up with. Now that said, please know I'm born in Nashville, Tennessee, and I sing country music, and I once played with Kenny Rogers on stage, so I'm kind of a mix of things. So I'll sing Italian love songs in Neapolitan dialects or, hee-haw, whichever is your cup of tea. It has been my privilege to be overseas for 26 years and to do about 45 semesters abroad or short trips abroad with ministers. And so, yes, when you give me a choice, and I gave your leaders a couple of choices, I could have given more, and you choose things that pertain to Paul and to archaeology and to the world of the New Testament, I jump on it. It is my privilege. But really, there's a theme to the class today. So we're going to take off on all 3 instances, our class, then the lesson and the worship, and then in the afternoon after lunch. We're going to take off from a moment in the life of Paul of Tarsus. I was 13 when I was baptized. How old were you? It happened in a northern Italian city of Pistoia. But about 6 years later, when I was 19, so a little older, I hadn't changed my mind. I was convicted, but you have ups and downs, especially when you're a teenager, living out your life, and especially on a mission field where there are very few of you, and everybody else is not. Is it my faith or is it my parents? You got to figure that out. If you grow up, are blessed to grow up in a Christian family, that's a blessing. You still have to figure out, whose faith it is at some point. At least that was my experience. And at 19, I find myself traveling, as it is easy over there, boats and trains and planes now. I found myself on Mars Hill. Mars Hill is an outcropping of a rock on the south part of the Acropolis in Athens, Greece. And it's where Paul was in the spring of the year 50. And he was surrounded by 50 or 100 PhDs in Greek philosophy. And he was alone. And he gave an impassioned discourse in defense and apology of his faith. That happened in the year 50. His conversion happened about 16 years before. I'm going to take off right now from what I assume you know. There are a lot of conversions that are recorded in the New Testament. The one that regards Paul is not more famous or more important. Let's get this straight. What's the value of your soul to God? What's the value of my soul to God? The same as Paul's. Value of one soul, the value of one. That's the major theme. I'm taking off from Paul's conversion, but I want to talk about that because if you're not in Christ today, your soul is the most valuable thing to God, more valuable than all this stuff that we got around us, whether it's mortar and bricks or land or money or bank accounts or whatever. God made all this stuff, by the way, but then he, in his most peak of the creative act of God, he made you. He made human beings. This whole world was made for human beings. And they were meant to be at God's table, God's garden. It's called the Garden of Eden, by the way. Genesis chapter 1, 2, and then that tragic chapter 3, which is the reason for the church, the reason for Christ, the reason for his sacrifice and everything else. Bring us back to the table. What's the value of one? If you're in Christ, today the lesson is this is how valuable you are. You maybe have known it, but you need a reminder. And secondly, what are you supposed to do with that information? Still, to this day, I'm not going to tell you my age, but I've been a Christian for over 40 years. And the point is still on this day in Leeds, Alabama, what am I supposed to do? What's God's plan for me to do in the days that I have left on the face here of the earth? What's God's plan for me? How valuable am I to Him in His work, in His kingdom? And that's the question. You're going to live yours out more or less here. I'm going to live mine out in Wetumpka and in Italy and in Greece and other places that by God's will I get to serve in. But the question is, what's the value of one? So I'd like to take you back to the details that we have of the conversion of Paul that then get to that theme of the value of one. There are 3 accounts of the life of Paul. Now, unless we're bullheaded and stubborn, we only need one. I was teaching a group of Iranians, Persians, in Athens, Greece in April. I was teaching a class, and one of the staggering questions of these people, they speak Farsi, I don't, so I had a translator, was, why are there 4, it's not working. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Now that'll, okay, try that. There we go. Let's go back. Oh, there we go. Thank you. They asked me, why are there 4 lives of Christ? You have to know that if you grew up in Islam, they don't teach you the life of Muhammad. I studied it in graduate school with a Muslim, but they don't teach it to Muslims because the Quran is the teachings of Muhammad, and that's all you need to know in at least radical Islam. They don't know the life of Muhammad, even though we know a lot about the life of Muhammad. Why are there 4 lives of Christ? 4, they're distinctive, but they're not in disagreement. 4 accounts of the life of Christ: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. By the way, the early church fathers threw away a bunch of spurious ones that were no good, that were not of witnesses that were there. Why do we have 3 accounts of the life of Paul in the book of Acts? There are 5 history books in the New Testament. 4 lives of Christ, and then book of Acts, the history of the first 32 years of the church. Why do we need 3 accounts of the life of Paul? Is his soul more valuable than anybody else? No. No. He knew that. He will say repeatedly, I'm the least of the apostles. I'm the greatest of sinners. And by the way, please remember what he did before his conversion. In the name of God, he arrested people. He killed people. He ripped children out of the arms of mothers. He was 100% convinced that he was doing God's will, that Jesus was not the Messiah, and therefore had to be stopped. And in the name of God, he did violence. He got letters of extradition to Damascus to go arrest fleeing brothers and sisters of Christ, of yours and mine, that had gone 150 miles north, thinking they would get out of harm's way. And they were wrong, because this young man, he was in his maybe late 20s, something like that, unmarried still. Usually anybody who's on the Supreme Court got married pretty soon, but he wasn't. And he took off on this journey with letters of extradition to stop this movement of the way of Jesus of Nazareth. You see, this movement has to be stopped. It's like squishing a pregnant spider. Have you ever tried it? Don't do it. I hate spiders. I hate snakes and spiders. And I have learned not to squish a pregnant spider, because you kill your mom and there's 1,000 spiderettes flying everywhere and you can't step on them. They're too little. That's what happened in Acts chapter 8 and verse 1. The Sanhedrin turned the screws on the early Christian community in Jerusalem and started arresting them and persecuting them. So they grabbed not their houses or their bank accounts. They grabbed their faith and they went on the road. And they went, that's like, trying to put out a fire on a stove, okay? I know, because I was in a fire burn unit one time, and the guy next to me, he had tried something you should never try, which is, okay, if your pan of grease lights on fire because it's for some whatever reason, don't come down on it to try to extinguish it with a lid that's smaller than the size of the pan. Okay, don't do that, because the fire comes out the sides. That's what happened. Pregnant spider, fire outside, either way, boom, things happen. That's what happened in Acts chapter 8. And so this young man takes off. This is one of my favorite painters, Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio. That's a lot of words. He was from a village in northern Italy called Caravaggio. He's in this painting from the early 1600s. And he paints, there's a big horse there, and that's assumed from the text that you have in Acts chapter 9, Acts chapter 22, and Acts chapter 26. It's a good assumption to think that 6 days' journey from Jerusalem all the way to Damascus, 150 miles, they were probably on mounts or on horses. And then there's a guy on the ground that's like this. Can you guess who that is? The guy on the ground that's like this. I don't know how many guys were with him, but he wasn't going to Damascus by himself to arrest a bunch of people. He was going with people with guns or swords and authority. He had an entourage, and they probably were on mounts and horses too. But the only thing that matters here, and the artist focuses in on it, is the guy on the ground that's seeing something and talking to somebody. You see, the guy that's holding the horse, he doesn't know what's going on. He hears some noises. He's seen light from heaven. But the guy on the ground, his name is, he was born Saul in the city of Tarshish. And he's from an Orthodox Jewish family. His parents sent him down to Jerusalem to go to the school of Gamaliel of the Pharisees. And that guy is on the Supreme Court. He's one of the top 70 guys. He's a Pharisee, son of Pharisee, as he will say. And he's on a mission from God and on fire to do the will of God. And he's going to stop this movement. Except that just on the outskirts of Damascus, on the southern gate, there he runs into the Lord. He runs into the risen Lord. He gets his own personal appearance of the resurrected Lord, the one whom he was denying, completely. That's what's happening right here. And I have to remember to move this forward. How could a highly trained, Paul will be the most educated apostle of all of them? Most of them were fishermen. Some of them were tax collectors like Matthew. He probably had a good education. He's definitely wealthy, Matthew was. But the most academically trained was Paul of Tarsus. Saul was his Jewish name after the king, first king of Israel, tribe of Benjamin he was. And Paul was his Greco-Roman name, which his parents had to give him and register with the Roman authorities by the 30th day in his city. If you were born with a right to Roman citizenship, only 5 to 10% of the world had that really. You had to register it with City Hall when you were born. He will be called Saul the first part of his life. He will be called Paul after this event right here, and he starts traveling for God instead of against God. How could he not recognize the Messiah? If you know the Old Testament scriptures, all those prophecies, how can you miss it? How could the high priest, how could the Pharisees, the foremost theologians of the day, how could they miss the Messiah? There had been hints at it in numbering hundreds in the prophets from 8 centuries before and beyond that. God actually hinted at it in the Garden of Eden, Genesis chapter 3 and 15. There's going to be one that's going to crush the head of Satan, the snake, the serpent, that's the one that's the tempter there. Here are 2 things I'll suggest to you. He didn't know the Messiah was to suffer. You see, we now think of Jesus as having to go on a cross and suffering, but that was not a perspective that Paul of Tarsus had, I'm suggesting to you. In his schooling, in his reading of the prophets, in his reading Isaiah, this incredible 7th century old text full of prophecies of the Messiah. When they got to that chapter in chapter 53, which we're not going to take time to read, but it's subtitled in many of the commentaries or maybe even in your Bibles, the suffering servant. Who's it describing? Who's it talking about? Okay? Now in school, probably when they got there, the teacher of Paul, his name was Gamaliel. He was the grandson of the founder of the school of Hillel of the Pharisees. Gamaliel will go down as one of the 7 great rabbis in all time for Judaism. Okay, very famous, his teacher. He probably got to that chapter and said, who's suffering there? Who's suffering? Whose bones will not be broken? Who is going to be spat upon? And who's that? Well, they saw that as Israel. Israel had been through 8 centuries of absolutely. So Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, and now the Romans were there. 8 centuries of dominators. They hadn't seen freedom for 8 centuries. They saw themselves as suffering. Of course, they should have recognized or did recognize at some point it was for their sins. But still, if they had remembered that, if you're suffering because of something you did, who are you going to blame? You see, the problem with that interpretation of Isaiah 53 is that Isaiah 53, if you read it, is clearly the person, whoever it is, the nation of Israel, is not suffering for their sins. They're suffering for somebody else's sins. Vicarious, that's the term in English, okay? Now, who is Israel suffering? Are all the waves of dominators that God allowed to take over them? Did they suffer because of somebody else's sin? No. You know, when we experience bad things, some of them is because we brought it on ourselves. We chose the wrong thing. We pulled out in the wrong lane, and so we had a wreck, you know. Sometimes somebody else hits us, so sometimes it's because we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Collateral, you could say, but Isaiah 53 is not collateral. Isaiah 53 is, okay, he's going to suffer. That can't be Israel for the sins of Israel. So who is he is the question. That is one reason. Another one is, if you go to Deuteronomy 21, and chapter 21, verse 23, you'll see that there's a picture that is painted there in the law that is given by God on Mount Sinai to Moses. And one of the dictats, is a man, depending on your translation, that it hangs on a tree, is cursed by God. A man that hangs on a tree is cursed by God. Okay, so if a man gets put on a cross, on a tree, that shows God's cursing of him, okay? That is probably a verse that stuck right here. No, Jesus couldn't be the one. Jesus couldn't be the one. I don't care what these people away say. I don't care what you say that Jesus was the Son of God. He can't be because he was put on a cross. That is not kosher with a blessing from God. Well, of course, here we go again. Why is the guy on the tree? Why did Jesus go on a tree? Why was he on a cross? Not because of his sins. What is one of the 7 sayings that are recorded by those gospel writers on the cross? Forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. The guy on the cross was there because not of his sins, but somebody else's. Jesus was a disturbing presence to Paul because he didn't fit. Isaiah 52 did not apply to him, and because he died on the cross, and that just can't be the way in which it happens. Now, do you remember what happened? And I'll have to rush quickly through this, but without reading Acts 9, 22, and 26, 3 chapters of the book of Acts where that's recorded. What happened a few miles outside of the road to Damascus, Syria? Today, the city of Damascus is the capital of Syria. It's where a civil war has been going on for over a decade. You may have seen it in the news. ISIS is finally off the news. But of course, they were threatening. And then there's the rebellion against the Assad regime. Damascus is not a good place to go visit. I don't go there. I'll go to Egypt. I'll go to Turkey. I'll go to many Muslim countries, but not Syria yet until that regime falls. South of Damascus is where he got his own personal appearance of the resurrected Lord. There were many post-resurrection appearances of Jesus. You'll find recorded in his 40 days, you'll find to individuals, to a woman, Mary Magdalene first, to the apostles multiple times, both in Judea and Galilee. And then about 4 years later, best I can tell, so if all of that happened in 30 AD when Christ returned, about 4 years later, Paul gets a personal appearance right here. It was both physical and spiritual, both physical and emotional and intellectual, and it involved everything about Paul. We are complex beings. We have a physical body that hurts and feels, and we have emotions, we have intellect, we have understanding, all of the above. This was for him. It was a complete revolution for him. Light, sound, appearance of a person. The other his entourage can't see the person. He can. Question, did he recognize him? I don't know. He said, who are you? And then he said, Kyrios in Greek, Lord. That's the way we have it. I don't know if Paul spoke, Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek. He was fluent in all 3 of them. So Jesus spoke in Aramaic, the Son of God. Now, I think Jesus could speak Greek too, because otherwise I can't explain how he talked to Pilate. But that said, what language did they speak in? Because it was not just a vision. It was physical. He was on the ground or something like that, and he was talking. And the guy was talking back. Who are you, Lord? When he says Lord, he means sir, like we say sir. He knows it's a spiritual being because you can't just show up like that. And besides, there's light, and that's God shows up in light a lot, and then there's various things like that. So for the rest of his life, the next 30 years, he will say to people, how come you went from being on the Supreme Court of the Jews? You had a salary and a career that were guaranteed, and that's what your parents sent you to college for. What happened to you? He will say, I saw and I heard the resurrected Lord. That changed my life for good. Okay? That's it. And he will stick with that story for the rest of his life. And he will get in trouble, beaten. He will get thrown into trash heaps. Because he stuck to that story. No, you don't understand. How many times did you have to tell that story of your conversion and what happened on the road to Damascus? Hundreds? How many times did you have to tell how come his parents never got in touch with him? Never hear about him in the New Testament. We know about his sister's son who saves his life in Jerusalem in the year 57. Besides that, no reference to his family. What happened? Did they write you off? All that tuition money to the school of Gamaliel wasted when you joined a sect that you were supposed to be putting down? What happened? Think of all that. He says, I had a complete revolution. It happened in the distance between, who are you, Lord, and the response that came, which is, I'm the one whom you are persecuting. How long does it take to figure that out, to hear it, and then conceive of what just said by this? Is this an angel? I'm going to call you sir and then worry about who you are later. But who are you? I am the one whom you are persecuting. Bing. 3 seconds. I'm wrong. I was wrong. Can you be 100% sincere and wrong? Can you? Paul was. You can be wrong. Key element of knowledge. So that's why I tell my students, I'm not inspired. You need to use your own brain. I may teach something that's incorrect. I hope not. Pray to God I don't. Stick to Scripture. But I could be wrong. I'm not inspired. Who's inspired here? Who's inspired? He was 3 seconds. Oh dear. And now what? I was once blind. I had an accident, a fire, and an explosion, and for 3 days I couldn't see. My glasses saved my eyesight, thank goodness. They were melted into a little pellet like that. I give thanks to God. And so for 3 days, go figure, I couldn't see. I can relate to that because the other senses that you have are just boom. I mean, your mind just races. Your ears, whoo, you perceive everything because one of your senses is shut down. Shut down. Paul gets his own 3 days of blindness. Is that right? What's that for? What's that for? It's to think, okay? By the way, later on in his life, in the year 61, he writes the letter of Philippians. He will use the Greek word when he's describing in one word the experience on the road to Damascus. He will say, katalenthen, which means I was snatched up, I was seized. It's kind of like, a bird of prey that comes on a little, you're looking out your window and you see a little cute little, sparrow, and it's on a limb, and then suddenly, a chicken hawk or zoom comes in from outside and just whoosh, and they're gone. No! I had a chicken hawk hit my chickens. I had 11 chickens, and I put a fence there, and I loved seeing that chicken hawk hit the fence because they couldn't see it. Man, that was a great day. There was no fence for Paul. That chicken hawk came in and zoom. He came in and 3 seconds flat. Who are you? I am the one you're persecuting. Oh no. Now what? I think you're going to need to think about this one. Why don't you take 3 days off? And by the way, to help you, I'm going to, let you be blind for a while. A lot of people have tried to explain away, even scholars, and watch out for people with too many PhDs. Watch out for them. They get too smart for themselves. A guy called Bultmann was a skeptic, and I'll refer to him, but you can try to explain away. Paul will say, I had both an inward and an outward understanding, revelation, whatever. I saw it with my eyes, I heard it with my physical ears, and I know it, and I'm sticking to it. And he never backed down. If we know his biography correctly, he was put to death with a Roman sword in the year 65 on the 3rd mile marker of the Ostian Road outside of Rome. He was still sticking to that story. I know who he is, and I'm not changing my story. I saw him, and I heard him. So there are, of course, skeptics about the story. Right. You saw God. You saw God. You saw the Son of God. Call him what you want. You saw God. Yes, I did. I got my own appearance of the resurrected Lord. There have been multiple attempts, even by people that say they are, scholars of the New Testament or whatever. Bultmann was in the 19th century, and we still have today a lot of people within the theological areas that dismiss Paul and his greatest miracle of all. Paul could do miracles later on. He was gifted by that on the road to Damascus by God, by Jesus. But that said, like the other apostles, they had all of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, as best I can tell. But he will say the greatest, experience was to see the resurrected Lord. There have been people try to explain it away. He didn't really see him. He just was, traveling 6 days. It was noon. It was hot. He had a heat stroke. It's called there's a syndrome where, you get captured by terrorists and you spend weeks with them and you turn and you become one of them. That's actually really happened, okay? Paul experienced that syndrome. He was so anti-Christian that he became one of them. He had a meltdown, psychological, physiological. Maybe it was dehydration. Maybe it was all kinds of reasons. Paul would say, no, 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 and no. You don't get to tell me what happened to me. You get to choose what to do with that information. What you're going to get to do is tell me what happened. So I'm telling you what happened, and he will stick to that story for the rest of his life. One of the problems with skeptics who don't really think he saw the resurrected Lord on that day is by the way, he wasn't alone. There were 15 to 20 other people, and while they didn't talk to Jesus, they saw a light and they felt around a noise. And I wonder what they said when they got back to Jerusalem a few weeks later without Paul and without their charges. They were supposed to be arresting people, and they trickled back to Jerusalem alone. What did the Sanhedrin say? What happened? I don't know. What happened? Light, sound. The guy in charge, you put in charge, he went off into no man's land. He left the reservation. He was blind. And then we didn't know what to do. And we were running out of our per diem allowance. So we came home. You're going to say he had a physiological breakdown? Well, what are the mathematical odds of 20 people having the same vision, appearance, even though they didn't talk to the resurrected Lord? Paul will say, really? You must be a simpleton to believe that when the 20 people could have the same experience at the same time. What are the mathematical odds of that? It's easier to believe that the resurrected Lord actually was there. By the way, Paul will also insist, I was fine. I wasn't overworked and overburdened and psychologically fragile and all that stuff. All of that will be true. Who are you, Lord? One of the things I'd like to put for you and move on, because I need to move to another part of the lesson, is how much had Paul ever seen the historical Jesus? By the way, let me suggest to you may have not had long hair. Jesus, that's a 5th century AD representation, Syrian representation. We have no idea what Jesus looked like. He may have probably had a beard, but long hair was for Nazarites, and those who took a vow, while Jesus was a Nazarene, and that's where the confusion about the long hair in art history has come down. Had he ever seen him? Was he at a distance when they dragged him through Jerusalem towards the cross? Had he heard him teach any in the temple for those days from Sunday through Thursday in which Jesus appeared in the temple of that final week of Jesus' life before crucifixion and then resurrection? Paul will only allude to some of the events in Christ's life. Let me suggest to you this. We have 4 accounts of the life of Christ. Paul knew everything he needed to know, and he was inspired by God. But in his letters, there are 13 of them, we don't have a lot of stuff about the life biography of Christ. We have what matters. He was crucified and he was raised. Paul will condense in 1 Corinthians 11 around the Lord's Supper what really matters about our understanding of that. It's possible that Paul will die in 64. That's about the time that Matthew, Mark, and Luke are written down. Now, Paul did have 15 days with Peter, so he got a lot of details about the life of Christ. He knew that Jesus had taught, it is more blessed to give than to. That's in Acts chapter 20 when he speaks to the Ephesian elders. So he knew a lot of stuff, and by inspiration, Paul can know anything. But that said, it's possible that you and I know more about the historical Jesus Christ than Paul did. That's an amazing thing. He left a lot of things out of his letters, maybe because the apostles were alive and they were the living testaments at that time and teaching things like that. So on to some other things. It happened in Damascus. I can't go there, you can't go there because it's too dangerous these days, but it was the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world where his conversion happened in Genesis 14. Today, if you and I could go there, there would be 3 landmarks that you would see. They would show you as a Christian. That's a Muslim city, by the way, but when they can get tourism, which is rarely. Now, a guide might take you to 3 places that relate to Paul. It's a road, it's a house, and it's a window. So before the modern day dictators and modern day Islam, there were many, it was easier to travel in early 20th century into Damascus to the place where Paul spent 3 days in blindness figuring out, okay, what do I do now? By the way, Damascus, which is very important to the life of Paul and to that one conversion, when I get to heaven, I'm going to go up to him, tap him on the shoulder. I'm teasing. I don't know if we'll have shoulders. I'm going to tap him on the shoulder in the left-hand corner of heaven and say, Damascus, and see how he reacts, you know. What I think is going to appear is a gigantic smile. You understand, that's just a metaphor, okay? But we're going to see each other. If I stay faithful, I know he was. We're going to see each other there. Damascus is still a very important geographical spot in Islam where they think there's going to be a gigantic confrontation at the end of time, in eschatological times, at the end of the world and the universe and time. And so it is in the Jewish tradition as well. Now the question is Damascus important to you and me? No. It's important to Paul, because that's where he got 3 days to figure out, okay, what are you going to do now? Okay? By the way, Damascus in a map is right there. It's 150 miles right in the middle of the map. If you see it, this is a topographical map of Palestine. I was privileged to be close to there in Galilee just in March of this year. It's my privilege to take people here. Maybe this is an easier picture. Look where Jerusalem is down by the Dead Sea, and then look way up top there. You see, if you want to talk about Israel, the land of Israel, the promised land, those terms refer to just south of Jerusalem where there is the Dead Sea, where Masada is, and then up north where Damascus is. That's a map of ancient world, but when you got to Damascus, you were leaving the promised land. That's where Paul will encounter people. Today, this is some excavations have been done of Damascus of the time of Paul. And just to make a quick reference, this is the street called Straight. By the way, that's a joke. It's anything but straight, even though in this segment to here it looks, it's ironic. It's not straight. It goes like this. Okay. And by the way, the street is still the same from 20 centuries ago. And that's where Paul went blind to be in the house that he was taken when a man called Ananias, sent by the Lord, even though he didn't want to, he's scared to death, Paul. It's like going to a terrorist and seeing if he's a nice guy. Paul was seen as a terrorist by the Jewish community. That's the little cave that's made 20 feet below the ground. Damascus has been destroyed many times. That is said to be the house of Ananias. That's highly doubtful, to be honest with you, but it does remind us it's a real place. This is this part of the gates of ancient Damascus that is said the window from which Paul will escape. More than once. It recorded in Acts chapter 9, but then also in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, he makes reference to being lowered with a basket from a window because guards were posted by the gates and were looking for him to kill him. And so he will be lowered out of a window. I don't know if that window right there that's walled up now in that wall, but that's what you'll find in modern day. Here's a quick question too. 3 days. Was Paul saved in that distance of 3 days? From the time that he found out who Jesus really was, Jesus of Nazareth, he really was the Messiah. And when he came out, the shackles came off his eyes, he could see, and he started going 280 miles per hour, working for the Lord instead of working against the Lord, which he had been doing before. He was not forgiven in my reading of Acts 9, 22 and 26. He had 3 days to think about it. Just because God appears to you doesn't mean you have to follow. By the way, there are no atheists in the Garden of Eden. Why did Adam and Eve rebel? Why did Cain kill his brother Abel? Was Cain an atheist? Absolutely not. Why? You need to choose. God gave us free will. You get to choose. So that's what he does. Here are some quick points. If Paul was saved, he didn't know it, I would suggest to you. If his sins were washed away, why do the baptism 3 days later? That's all part of the narrative here. In chapter 22 and verse 10, Paul asks Christ what he is to do. What am I supposed to do? Action. Not just pray God into your heart, which is unfortunately what some believe today. What am I supposed to do? There's an action here. Some say, well, then why did Ananias, when he, scared as he was, come by instructions of God to get Paul? Why did he call him brother? Well, there are 3 uses of brother in the New Testament. The word brother is physical brother, a Jewish brother, and Christian brother. And the one he wasn't using was Christian brother. He was using Jewish brother because they were both Jews. But by the way, after baptism, he can also call him Christian brother as well. Paul was not fully converted for 3 days. He got to choose. Maybe you're not fully converted today. You get to choose. The question is, how much time do you have? I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know. That's a bell, isn't it? Oh, my. Okay. Well, I'm going to just simply go a little ahead because I knew I had more material. How important is one conversion? Conversion of the Apostle Paul. Probably nothing I said was new to you. Probably well known to you. There is one of my favorite writers. He's from Manchester, England. His name is F.F. Bruce, and he wrote one of over 100 biographies of Paul. And he says, no single event, except for Christ, has proven as determinate as the Damascus Road event. Why are the 3 accounts of the conversion of Paul? Is it because he matters more soul-wise than you do or anybody else? No. And no, not at all. That's not the case at all. It is true that Paul occupies a large portion of the book of Acts because, one, he was no doubt loved by Luke, who writes the book of Acts. Luke traveled with him at least 3 times during his missionary journeys. And Paul had a massive effect on the propagation of the New Testament Christianity, but he was not alone. The 11 apostles are given the task by Jesus in his ascension moment to go into all the world. Their mouths must have been as open like that. They didn't have planes or internet. Now, how are we supposed to do that? Paul thought they were supposed to do it in his lifetime. And he started traveling when he left blindness at 280 miles per hour in Damascus. He traveled for the next 30 years, absolutely. The effect that Paul had, let's start listing the congregations that he starts during his 30 years of missionary travels, just began, Besides, he worked for 8 years, sharing his faith in the Arabian desert for 3 years, in his hometown of Tarsus for 8 years. We don't have a record much of that, but how about, Antioch, Pisidia, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, Philippi, Berea, Thessalonica, Athens. Make the list of all the churches that he established together with others. You're not alone, but during his missionary journeys for the next 30 years. Man, what can one person do? What is the value of one soul to the kingdom of God? What were you and I meant to do with the life that we were given? There's the plans that we make. I'm go to college, I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to have a career and this and that. I'm going to have a family. There's the plans that we make. And then there's, what did God have in mind for me to do? What Paul thought is that he was supposed to be in the Supreme Court and defend Judaism from this spurious thing called the way. What God instantly reminded him of, no. You're supposed to be one of my apostles And what did he do? Mr. Bruce says, wow, do you realize what he did? I'm not going to have any time, but I'm going to suggest to you. Did you see this movie? It's been on TV at repetition lately, but it came out in 2015. Made a bunch of money. It cost about $110 million to make, and raked in a bunch. It's a Matt Damon, if you know him, but he's a Martian, and he gets stuck on one of our futuristic mission trips, and he has to figure out how to survive and stay alive, and he wants to go home. And home, which is the Earth and NASA and all the powers that be, you know, are going to at first say we can't do anything, but then they're going to go at the incredible extent to bring one person home from Mars. The movie is well done. Ridley Scott's a good movie maker. And one of the interesting things that he puts in the mouth of the character that Matt Damon plays of a botanist on Mars is, you know, if I die here, you know, how much will my life have mattered? At least I was part of a larger cause. You know, what cause are we? Why are you here this morning for Bible class and worship? We were blessed with a thing called the church, which is the kind of the ship that takes us to salvation and faith. We're not meant to live it alone. What's the value of one person, one soul to God? You know, in 30 seconds or less, I'm going to bypass a lot of things and just simply, do you remember the parable of the shepherd? 99 are found, but one is lost. What's the value of one to God? To what lengths would God go to get one soul back to the dinner table of his family that was meant to be, back to the Garden of Eden where we're supposed to be? What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Questions that are asked. The value of a soul is measured by a lot of things, and I'm out of time, but what's the value of Paul's soul? Enough for Jesus Christ, the Son of God, to die alone for him. If only one person, Jesus still had to die. For you and for me. For us alone and for Paul. Thank you for the class period.